That's where they...
She was under the bed of the Leach home.
At the time
when
of
they
the slide.
after in the morning, the day after the slide.
Yes.
I see. And was the family wiped out?
Yes. They're buried over here in the cemetery.
Is that so?
And that child... that child is dead, I think. I'm not positive.
No, I don't think so.
I'm not
sure. The lady is a little bit diffident about it being known, and I think it's just as well. But she lives in Nelson right now.
I wouldn't be surprised, but as far as I know, I don't know anything about that part of it.
Well, that's very interesting, and about a third of the houses were destroyed by this
About
slide.
1/3. Now, when we went down there, shortly after the slide, I went into the barber shop that was left right across the road from the station, and in there I met an Indian from a Kootenay Indian from down Cornwall way, selling baskets, broad split material baskets, made at Kootenay in Cornwall, and that he was an old friend at Cardinal and Iroquois, and recognized him, and here he was with his son. And we were surprised, both all of us.
Yes, you'd known one another before.
Yes.
Back east.
And that man was a foot racer.
A foot racer, is that so?
Champion foot racer.
Is that so?
But he was Kootenay Indian selling baskets made down there in Alberta.
Well.
That's what surprised me.
Yes, I see. Well, that is very interesting. And as you said, they moved the rest of the buildings to Blairmore, mostly.
Mostly to Blairmore.
I see. Well, that solves a question that I've had in my mind for a long time.
Now, they were about 2/3 of the original town, as near as we can judge.
I see.
And in the mine, the coal mine at Frank, a horse, 42 days after the slide, was found by some of the miners who thought about that horse.
That's so.
And they went up there and got into the slide, got him out, and fed him, and it killed him.
Oh, is that so? Well.
Yeah, the horse hadn't had anything to eat for 42 days. And
they gave him too much.
Well, he wasn't able to digest.
He wasn't able to assimilate it. Well, now, you were there about that time. What did they attribute the cause of the slide to?
Oh, at that time, up on the top of Turtle Mountain, there was a crack about 2 inches in width.
Yes.
A fracture.
A fracture.
And that crack today, according to latest reports that I have, 2 years ago, was 28 inches wide.
Oh.
And there'll be another slide at Frank Turtle Mountain, as sure as fate.
I see.
But when remains to be seen.
Yes, I see. And you figure that it was another crack similar to that meant the falling of that mountain.
The shooting and the blasting in the coal mine.
Sugar that.
Was just all it was necessary to cause both slide and tipping.
Yes, both the slide and the tipping.
The height of Turtle Mountain, the biggest rocks would be at the top.
Yes.
Well, those biggest rocks are on the farthest side of the slide.
Yes.
Proving that it was a tip over as well as a break at the bottom.
Yes, I see.
And the railroad track today goes around.
Well, that's very good information from a man that was right on the spot.
Well, I wasn't there.
No, not exactly there. The St. David.
The Geological Survey at Ottawa will verify, give you the facts.
Yes.
Because they are watching that
Yeah, they're watching those tracks.
Evidently.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very good. Now, from Fernie, that was that while you were still at Fernie, or were you living at Cranbrook?
No, I was here in Cranbrook.
You were living in Cranbrook. You came to Cranbrook in 1902.
1902.
Yes. Well, what occupation did you follow when you come to Cranbrook?
Well, I was millwright and cleaner man at Robertson Mackenzie's sawmill, where the Pioneer water wheel was in use.
Mm-hmm.
That wheel had been in use down here at the old Pioneer St. Eugene Hospital site in 1881.
Oh, yes.
The man that put it there was the late Mr. Hanson.
Oh, yes.
Of Wasa,
Mm-hmm.
who was a pioneer at Wasa long ahead of the construction of the coal.
Yeah.
And I followed up that kind of work. I worked at Marysville and at Kimberley. Rode a bicycle up to the North Star mine in 1902. At least I pushed it up from Kimberley and rode it down.
Mm-hmm.
And the construction of the Marysville smelter was another job I worked at.
Mm-hmm.
Worked at with the George Lowry Lumber Company sawmill up alongside of the Alice mine at Creston in 1905.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, the principal industry around Cranbrook in the early days was both mining and lumbering, was it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The Pioneer smelter was at Marysville. 100 men from Cranbrook, mostly, were turning Sullivan ore, desulfurizing Sullivan mine ore at Marysville smelter at a cheaper rate than could be done or was being done at Trail.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the late Mr. Aldridge, as manager, compliment Mr. Hall as manager at Marysville, or business manager, on being able to desulfurize it, that ore, cheaper at Marysville than at Trail when he was visiting here.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of a week, the patentee was called to Trail.
Oh, yeah.
Inside of a few months, the smelter at Marysville shut down.
Oh, I see.
And the plant went to... That was the Huntington-Heberlin process, the first installation in America at Marysville.
At Marysville, I see.
And I was millwright there in the construction of the, well, most of the work.
Yes,
much of the work. Not all of it, but much of it.
Yes, I see.
And
well, now...
I worked a few weeks there and decided I couldn't get the results that I wanted, and I went in to draw my time, and the late Mr. F.D. Wicks headed me off from getting my money, and I was stepped out of the office. He came out right behind me and he says, "What's the matter, Hutch?" Well, I told him, I said, "I can't see my way clear here." Why? Well, I don't know what to say. Where did you have your experience? I said, "At the Bruce Mines." What? He had been at the Sudbury Mines at the time. He says, "Who was your boss there?" I says, "Tommy Mitchell." "How long did you work for Tommy Mitchell?" 9 months. He asked me to go to Mexico to do the same work there for Mr. Green of New York. That's what we've been doing at Bruce Mines. Because anyone that works for worked for Tom Mitchell 9 months, can work for me 9 years. He says he had 3 gangs, a coming, a stopping, and a going gang.
Yeah.
That was his reputation at Sudbury.
Yeah, I see. Uh-huh. I see. It's a hard man to please, eh?
But he knew his
He knew his business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the main thing.
And was your Rosslyn, and he was in Rosslyn when I was quitting Marysville.
Oh, yes.
And he offered me a job.
I see. Have you ever worked over at Rosslyn or Trail, Nelson?
Oh, I can't say that I worked over there, but I spent 8 hours in the Greyhound Depot at Vancouver, waiting to get the right bus to come back to Cranbrook by Rosslyn Trail, where I had been in March the 4th, 1904.
Mm-hmm.
As a delegate from Cranbrook, one of 3 delegates from Cranbrook to a convention there. And I remember that you could look down from Rosslyn, you could almost roll a snowball down on the trail.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see the difference between 1904 and 1959.
Yes, I see.
I saw it.
Yes, I see.
We came back by Castle Gar.
Yes, I see. Mm-hmm.
Now then, I'm an advocate of the irrigation of St. Mary's Prairie land by the use of St. Mary's River water.
Oh, yes.
And in accordance with the Webb report to the federal government some 10, 12 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Now, irrigated by the same water that we let go away, unused, and they are putting it on at the rate of $3 an acre with 75-year amortization plan. Why can't we do the same right here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, that's the question that's up to...
Where would you have the dam site?
Oh, you could have a dam set there where Meridian 116 crosses the St. Mary's just below Whitecliff, below Matthew Creek, and that would flood 100,000 acres or more on St. Mary's Prairie.
Oh, yes. Has there been any investigation of it or anything done about it?
The Webb report to Ottawa caused the opening of an office here known on Baker Street as the Water Rights Branch.
Oh, yes. I see.
Now, it's not their fault.
No.
It's our fault of our governments, both federal and provincial, that land isn't irrigated.
Yeah. Well, of course,
the owners of those lands are anxious to have it done.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd think that some more aggressive action would be taken in regard to it. Of course, I'm from the West Kootenay, so I don't know anything about it.
Well, we're prepared to tell them where in their own books they get all the data that's necessary.
Yes, I see. Uh-huh. Well, I hope something is done about it. Anything that's going to increase the value of the population of BC.
This year, the crops of St. Mary's Prairie are very poorly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the best land on that area includes quite about 3/4 of the best land is on the St. Mary's Band's Indian Reserve.
I see.
And they're anxious to have that upper level of their land irrigated.
Yes, I see.
But why is it not done?
Yes, I see. Mm-hmm.
Now, who's to blame? Another thing, here's the city of Cranbrook's taxpayers paying dearly for underground water problems, breaking of water pipes. In March the 21st, here in the KP Hall, the Honorable George Hees, Minister of Transport, had the matter called to his attention. And he was referred to a Canadian Supreme Court's decision in Manitoba in 1953. He says all Cranbrook has to do, or needs to do, is to ask and receive the federal government to take over that responsibility. They haven't done so yet. And Dr. Halstead, the BC representative of the Geological Survey of Canada, has asked Ottawa to provide the funds and order them spent to solve that problem. 2 counties in Ontario took advantage of it in 54 and 55 and got action. That data is in the Superintendent of Works office, right here in Cranbrook, but no action.
No action, eh? Well, now, you spoke, before we started this interview, you spoke of Fred Smythe, who is a mutual friend of ours. I knew Fred quite well when he was in Nelson, and he was kind enough to mention me as a being among the pioneers in his book, Tales of the Kootenays. So I knew him very well, and you know of the stories that he has published in his book, and you say that you have further stories, there are more stories on the Tales of the Kootenays, or more Tales of the Kootenays?
Yes, there are several of us that have, but there are probably 100 true Tales of the Kootenays available for your use at any time, as soon as I can see to gather them up.
Well, I'll certainly be glad to receive a copy of them. Of course, I feel that this program, certainly this program, belongs, we're calling it, at the suggestion of the Cranbrook station, we're calling this series Tales of the Kootenays.
Yes, good.
And I feel a great obligation to cover all parts of the Kootenays in this program, and I'll certainly be glad to get any help.
The East and West Kootenay tales are interwoven.
Yes, absolutely. You can't separate them. No, that's quite true, because in the early days, as one miner was telling me a couple of days ago, in the early days, if one mine shut down, he went to another mine.
Yeah.
That mine may be over in a far different part of the district than where he has been working.
Yeah.
And so that the result is that the same men traveled all over the Kootenay district, and they were just as much a citizen of one part as another.
Exactly.
So when we speak of the Kootenays, any of these men, they belong to the whole district.
To the Kootenays.
Yes, they belong.
Now, just back that up. Mr. Name's just what I want to use.
Okay.
Pioneer of Grome Creek.
Bailey Grome.
Bailey Grome.
Groman.
He had 10 or so more in 1888 petitioned the BC government to establish a mining recording office at Nelson.
Oh, yes.
Because it was costing the prospectors as much as $250 to come over here to Wild Horse recording office of 1868 and attend to their recording.
Yes.
And that established the recording office in Nelson.
Yes, that was partly the cause of the Hamill murder, because it was so far, and there was a queer law at that time. A man must not be absent from his prospect for a certain length of time, And that length of time did not allow him to go such big distances to a recording office.
Exactly. And that reminds me of the case of Kennedy from Wild Horse coming over to Perry Creek and laying out the Kennedy town site as a branch for the Hudson Bay Company.
Mm-hmm.
And when he went back and his friend with him to Wild Horse, here were 6 or 7 men leaning over looking down into his shafts that he had left.
Oh, yes.
And he says, someone's got hurt in that shaft. I should have covered it.
Yes, that's
They
it.
were like and repeated. His granddaughter, I think it is, was a native of living in Boston a few years, and Mr. Joy has that story.
Oh, yes.
Now, when they got to the shaft, here was a group of men pouring up gravel that Bob Dorr, D-O-R-R,
Oh, yes.
was panning rich gold out of.
Well,
Dorr had abandoned temporarily a tunnel that he was driving up on the hill above and had jumped this shaft.
I see. And that was placer. Was that be placer mining? Yeah.
And Kennedy has that story is Mr. Joy has that.
That's
story.
at Perry Creek.
It was at Wild Horse.
Oh, Wild Horse.
But
Oh,
they were returning to Wild Horse
Oh, I see. From Perry.
from Perry Creek,
Oh,
Old
yeah.
Town.
I see. Oh, yes. Old Town. Mm-hmm.
The jail is the only building, and the cemetery at Old Town is the only part that is left.
Yes.
Now, a bushfire or neglected campfire burned the old hotel down about 40 years ago.
Well.
On the 24th of May, 2 of us drove out from Cranbrook around by the mission and up to Old Town, the only road there then, and we found 5 men down on bedrock, just upstream from Old Town jail, making good money, and that shaft is pilled today, but the bull wheel across the creek on another shaft was an adventure, a speculation by cavalry people.
I see.
But that isn't the shaft that was operating. But now that is on 24th of May, 1902.
I see.
Such is history.
Yes,
This district.
that's
Those are just more tales of the Kootenay.
yes, sure. That's more tales of
Now, the late Mr. Fred Smythe and I visited the Sherwood property on Perry Creek
Oh, yes.
a few years before he died. And as we walked down the trail, he got some information on Perry Creek.
Yes.
In East Kootenay, we have 50 miles of underground workings, idle,
Yes.
suitable for civil defense and emergency needs, readily accessible by auto roads or trails that can be transformed into auto roads,
Yes.
and over 40 estates of pioneers belonging to the BC government,
I see.
and a ton of ore for every bushel of wheat
Yeah.
that are grain on the main prairie, about which you hear so much, but not a word about the ore here.
Yes. I see. You still feel there's plenty of ore here.
I'm prepared to prove it.
Yes. And but what is holding back the development of that? Is it the methods or what?
It's lack of common sense.
I see.
They know how.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You know
Here's
how.
another thing. Along about 1933, the prospectors lost their discovery rights in BC simply because of a company having stakes 200 or more and surveyed 200 or more mineral claims without the use of a discovery post.
Oh, yeah.
Who's to blame? Not the prospectors, not the people that did this underground working, but the BC government of that day.
Yes, I see. In what way? Just go a little farther with that.
They allowed BC land surveyors to go around and survey and not put down legal posts.
Yes, I see.
And discovery posts were required
Yes.
at that time. We lost that question of discovery rights.
Yes, I see.
And that applies to as the cause of a pair of claims, a pair of estates, having gone back to the BC government. There's two pioneers who came in here in 1885, and they're buried over here in unmarked graves, separately from one another, instead of together, in the cemetery known as the Cranbrook Cemetery for Old Age Pensioners.
I see.
Which I consider a disgrace to the people of Cranbrook.
Yeah, I see. In what way?
I go and look at it and see.
Yeah.
Compared with West
Oh, I
Lawn.
see. It's not
There
kept
it
up
is.
properly.
There it is, compared with West Lawn.
Yes, it's not kept up.
And I claim that a pioneer of pioneers of 1861, 63, 70, 85, and so on, deserve just as much respect as those.
You're
today.
absolutely right. Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah. Well, that thing, you have a wonderful organization here in this East Kootenay Historical Society.
certainly.
I think they're doing a marvelous piece of work, and of course they possibly need a little bit. They're getting a lot of attendance at their outings and their meetings and so on, and I hadn't the least idea myself that they were doing such a marvelous piece of work. And I haven't any doubt but what they'll get around to some of these questions one of these days.
Well, there's well over 100 historical pictures of historical sites
Yes.
that's available for the Historical Association of East Kootenay, of which I was one of the pioneer members.
Oh, yes.
And I'm unable to travel around like they are able to do,
Yes.
simply because my days of driving a car are over with. I drove the first automobile from Cranbrook to Kingsgate and back to Wardener in 1917,
Good.
but it wasn't the first one.
No. That's
Oh, by the way, in regard to the pioneer automobile in Marysville, it was Mr. Hanson's car, a Rambler,
Oh, yes.
driven by Kansas Johnny Ewan as his chauffeur in 1904. That was the first automobile into Marysville. Mrs. Lund, who was associated with her brothers in financing Henry Ford's purchase of the warehouse that put him on his foundation basis, she drove the second one in there 2 years later. It was a Ford.
Well, I have
Mr. James came into Marysville between those times. Our first car he saw was Mrs. Lunn driving the Ford. But I don't want to discredit his story. But the fact is that the Rambler, that the late Mr. Hanson, of Hanson Garage of Wasa, got in there.
I have a special edition of the Nelson Daily News on Cranbrook and the East Kootenay among my files, and I believe there's some pictures of those early cars in it.
Yes. And the first billiard table to come into East Kootenay is over here in the radio pool room on Main Street. That's been in a dozen places since it came in here in 1888 as the first train load of freight coming to British Columbia.
Is that a fact?
And the late Mr. Neil McCrimmon hauled it from Golden down to Wasa. And the first organ, the senior citizens Cranbrook Branch number 11 own it now, or have it. That was in that same car.
Is that so?
And
well, now, that is, what year did you say that would be?
1888.
1888. Oh, yes.
Now, they were set up over at Wasa Hotel.
Oh, yes. I see. They were brought down from Golden.
That is
shortly after.
Four-horse team.
That is shortly after the CPR was built, wasn't it?
The first freight train. It brought CPR right into British Columbia.
Is that so? Well.
According to the story given me by the late Mr. Neil McCrimmon, and nephew of John the Ox of Big Gary.
That's all.
And he's my poor fellow's not alive now, but he gave me that story.
Is that so?
And Kenny McKinnon was the man that asked me to ask him his relationship to John the Ox.
I see.
He had another Glengarrian, and he'll admit it. He says that was my uncle.
Well, that's fine. That's very interesting.
Those little yarns don't belong to history in a sense.
Well, sure they do. That's very historical.
But one thing will make you think of another.
Oh, sure. Well, that's quite all right. That's. I think it's very interesting to get the first things that happened in the different things at the very beginning of the settlement of this district.
Mr. Ross, regional official for the Lands and Forest Branch over in West Kootenay, has 7 pictures of the Fernie Fire and the big clubhouse near the flagstone and that area. That clubhouse was built and brought a bunch of English people, old country people out to enjoy life, and that building is all down, and that was Bailey Rome's reward for putting a boat through the Canal Flats.
Is that so? That is his reward from who?
From the BC government.
From the BC government.
And the last boat that hauled over from the North Star Landing down to Jennings is sunk up there at I think it's Invermere, near Invermere, Jasselmere. That's the boat, the last boat that hauled over.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing it pulled up with a team of horses on 2 teams on a cable, and it passed Wardner in 1902, I think it was, in the spring of 1902.
Oh, yes. Were you acquainted with Captain James Armstrong, Frank Armstrong, I should say.
No, but I knew
he was the
brother.
captain of the North Star.
Oh.
He was afterwards a resident of Nelson with his family. I think he went from here over to the Arrow Lakes.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
It wasn't his brother, J. Fergie Armstrong?
Well, it might be. I
knew his
know
brother
for sure.
had.
Yeah, possibly so. Well, now this has been a wonderful interview with you, and I know you have loads and loads more stories, and I'll be looking forward to securing those other stories of yours at a future time, and they'll certainly go on there, and they'll be a great addition.
Well, I'm not hunting for publicity.
No, that's all right. I'm hunting for publicity. At least I'm hunting for publicity.
You know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. I'm looking for publicity for the Kootenays, and you're the man. You're the man that can give it to me.
Well, I'm only one. There's others here.
This is just a hobby, you see.
You get in touch with Mr. A.B. Smith.
Yes, Mr. A.B. Smith.
He lives south of town, about a mile straight out from the station there.
Oh, yes.
And Mr. Almack knows him well.
Yes.
And his background is like myself, Victor, the Huey Loyalist family.
Oh, yes.
We were born within 8 miles of one another, but we never met until we met out here in 1904.
Is that so? Well.
And he was a pioneer in here, Smith Prairie, up at the head of 6 Mile and Tracy Creek. Is where he...
A.B. Smith.
A.B. Smith.
Well, we'll certainly look him up.
And Mrs. Charlie Stevens
Yes,
can give you some stuff.
I see.
That will be interesting.
Well, that's fine.
Just a minute.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Huscroft, for Hutchcroft,
Yes.
isn't it? For this wonderful addition to our Tales of the Kootenays. I know you're so very, very interested in it, and having been one of the original members of the Cranbrook, the East Kootenay Historical Association, and I'll be looking forward to future interviews with you too, because it is very, very interesting. And I've promised the boys here that I'm going to come back again and get more stories and boost this part of the Kootenay as much as we can, so it'll take its share in the whole story of the Kootenays.
I appreciate that and hope to see the Historical Association of East Kootenay and the similar one of West Kootenay doing their part towards the celebration of the BC Centennial in 1966 and the National Centennial in 1967.
Well, that'll certainly be something to shoot for.
And we have plenty of time to prepare and
well, I'm glad to see a man of your experience and evidently of your ability and education that is so enthusiastic about it and is so willing to devote his time to the recording of these early days and this early history, because I'm afraid men with your knowledge of it are getting very scarce.
Well, we can't live forever.
No, that's right. But I certainly hope that we can extend your term on this earth for a long, long time yet.
I've had my second experience with a heart action
I see.
In action.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not hunting for the third one.
No,
I've got to be careful.
Yes. Well, I hope you are.
Now, here's something that I'd like to ask you, is to get the old-timers
Yes.
to give you their stories.
Yes. Well, I'm by the help of Mr. Almack and others here, they're certainly a great assistance and going to a great deal of trouble in taking me around. And I'm hoping that when this is put on the air over the Cranbrook station, that the people of Cranbrook will enjoy the stories and become even more enthusiastic about their district, and that it'll be also a great help to the youngsters in the schools and so on that'll take an interest in these things, and because that history really is a lot more valuable, in my opinion, than even the old ancient history of Britain or France or anywhere else.
Well, I'm glad you look at it that way, because our younger generations are taking a much more active participation in progress.
Yes. Yes.
Than
They're helped quite a bit by the schools.
Yes. Now, it's surprising, I notice, that our younger generations,
yes,
especially those under 20.
I know that Mr. Joy has often said when he was alive that he would have the kids in from the schools seeking information about certain things, you know, and that's very healthy.
Now, the making of money isn't the only thing in life.
No, it's certainly not. You don't
and we can't eat or take away with us what we have on dumps, ready to move.
Yes.
It's surprising the number of septuagenarians, octogenarians, and nonagenarians who are taking that same viewpoint. And it is up to us, as a matter of loyalty to our country, to do our part.
That's right.
And to organize it in a systematic manner, and force our governments to listen.
I think you're absolutely right, and I've been thinking very much lately that we've had in Canada a Canada Council established, and they're looking for something to advance the interests and benefit of Canada, and I think that they could take a much more active part and beneficial part to preserving our history, both local, right down to the local level, and assist in the publication of these things. As it is now, there's been a few people like Kate Johnson of Nacusp and Fred Smythe and others that have published little books on history. Now we have a wonderful thesis in our library in Nelson, and they have it on file at the archives. A thesis by Mollie Cottingham, and that is just, well, it's just going stale or rotting in the library without being published. And the trouble is, no private person has the money to publish these things, and it should be done by the country.
Now then, here in July, fully financed man, 74 years of age, called on me, renewing acquaintances. They were established in 1935. He today is the top advisor of two well-known stock companies. He's asked me to place my collection of governmental reports available for his engineers and others. I'm willing to do so. Where are we going to put it?
Yes.
Cranbrook Library has been invited to study ways and means of taking care of it because it's central.
Yes, sure.
Our unprecedented bushfires last July stopped his plans moving shipload quantities of material from two local deposits that called for 99% purity. That meant work for quite a few of the largest size trucks to be loaded at the point of production, dumped into open hatcheries of boats at Vancouver. Now, you don't need to be told what that meant. And that can be going ahead even yet.
Yes.
I've merely touched on a few
Yes.
of the points.
Well, we should be able to do, it's all right for them to get a copy of these things, but I think we should be able to keep on our own archives of this district, our own history.
Yes.
Anybody who wants a copy of it, that's fine. But in any case, we should have copies of it in our own custody.
Yes. Now, David Thompson came through here over 150 years ago.
Yeah.
He was the peacemaker between the Kootenays and the Crees up there at Kootenay House,
Yes.
the oldest building in East Kootenay. Shouldn't that be preserved?
Absolutely.
The Kootenays gave him the cognomen of Sint, the man who looks at the stars,
Oh, yes.
as a token of their appreciation of the man. But at the late Mr. Ray C. Turner told us at high schools in Ontario what he had discovered as engineer with the Dawson Report of 1888, having found where Thompson had surveyed the boundary line between Canada and the States from Duluth through to the Columbia.
Oh, yes.
Thompson was the pioneer Canadian from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are historical facts.
Yes.
A copy of Thompson's memoirs is in the Cranbrook Library Association.
We had Herridge, Bert Herridge, our MP, had, for West Kootenay, sent the Oldtimers it was intended for the Kootenay Historical Association, or Society, and he thought that Mr. R.G. Joy was the secretary of the Historical Society, but he wasn't, but he was secretary for the Oldtimers. And it came into his hands, and somehow or another that Mr. Herridge supplied us with a copy of Thompson's Travels, a book on Thompson.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that's got to.
Well, there's a copy of his memoirs in the Cranbrook Library.
There is, I see.
I supplied it from, I got it down in Montana, college down there, and they've quit publishing because, and I have a copy here.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. But that is something, things like that. That's only one instance.
Yes, sure.
Now, for instance, when Thompson was going down the Columbia, he had a wreck at what is known as Death Valley.
Oh, yes. Whereabouts is that?
Up near, way up the head end.
Oh, I see. Yes, Death Rapids.
Yes, Rapids, yes.
Death Rapids.
Yeah, I should have said.
Yes.
A pair of newly married Wallaces were found clasped in one another's arms at the foot of the rapids. That's how Thompson gave that name to Death Rapids.
Is that so?
They were from Wallaceburg, Ontario.
Wow.
Second cousins of the grandfather.
Is that second cousin to your grandfather?
Second or third.
Well, that's...
They landed at Clark
You
Wallace.
come from a historical background.
Clark Wallace landed in Ontario at Wallaceburg from Ireland. The other...
Captain Armstrong made a trip in... what year? I forget now. It was in the 80s. Down to Donald for the first celebration, Dominion Day celebration. And he made a trip from Golden right to Revelstoke, or to Donald, with the boat. It took him about 8 hours to come down, and it took him 24 hours to go back.
Yes.
And that was the only trip that has ever been recorded on that.
Yes,
river.
well, now here's something for you. The two Evans brothers that I mentioned a while ago came in here in 1885. They went on up the Kootenay district to Golden, up the Canoe River, on over the Divide, down the Thompson River, which shouldn't have been named Thompson by Fraser. And Fraser named it Thompson in a mistake, thinking it was the river that Thompson had followed.
Oh, yes, I see.
Thompson came into East Kootenay by the Vermilion Pass.
Oh, yes.
But that's another matter. They went down the Fraser till they came to that canyon where you had to climb ladders.
Oh, yes.
And the older ones said, I don't like the looks of them. I doubt if my weight will go up, so they'll hold. Well, we'll see, said Bill. He was somewhat lighter. He fixed the ladders, and down says, Charlie, come on. One at a time. I'll take that rope and let it down to you from the top, and that'll hold you. Up they went, and down to the Pacific, over to Victoria, and in 1888, Charlie wrote his poem, Standing on the Beach.
Oh, yes.
40 years later, as I was chairman of a miners' meeting in Nelson, it was Sid Norman, S.S. Taylor, F.G. Blaylock, and the man that was pioneer hunting in Africa.
Salou? Carl Salou, at least his brother. His brother was a great hunter in Africa.
That's another one, but this was an agent for mining firm in the coast.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of his name just now. It's on record in the Nelson News of that.
Yes.
And I called on Charlie to repeat that poem. 40 years after it was written.
Oh, is that so?
He smiled and get up and said, I don't know whether I can remember it. He got up and read that recited it.
Recited it, yes.
Word for word.
Is that so?
And brought an ovation from this man, I'll think of his name.
Yeah.
And Taylor and Blaylock and Sid Norman and Jack Mulholland and a bunch of them, they couldn't hardly stop.
I see.
And that's one of the two Evans brothers. They were both there.
Oh, yes.
Here they are buried over in unmarked graves.
Is that so?
And we have over 30 unmarked pioneer graves in this district.
Well, that shouldn't be.
Well, it's not my fault.
No, I'll bet not.
Another thing, we have 25 or more artificial lakes in this district.
Oh, yes.
Created by the placer miners who came in here in 1849 after the placer gold boom of California broke.
Yes.
And the nigger who kept his name to himself is remembered by Nigger Mountain and Nigger Creek.
I see.
His 6 partners who stood by him at Palmer's Bar when 23 of the 30 got jealous of the 6.
Oh, yes.
But especially of the nigger.
I see.
And they asked him to take their share of the jackpot. And, well, he did. And the other 5 along with him. And they moved upstream about 6 miles. Time for supper time. He says, gentlemen, I don't want to be the cause of trouble between you 6. Please let me act as a fence here between you and the 23, or I'll go on and you fellas stay here.
Yeah.
They say, you stay here. And those 7 men, those names are marked on the government maps some one way or another. Other 23 had to be fed by the BC government 2 winters in succession. After Kootenay Trail came in.
Oh, yeah.
Now, details of these things would fill a whole lot of space.
Oh, it would, yes. That's all history. You speak of a very good friend of mine, Jack Mulholland.
How is Jack, though?
Jack has been in the hospital lately. He's looking kind of thin.
Jack,
and
older than me.
He is, eh? And yes, he's pretty old. And I've been talking to him at different times, and I'm going to take some recording from him.
Well, by all means, get Jack Mulholland to tell you some of his stories.
Yes, I certainly will.
Because he was a pioneer here. He was in the East Kootenay as well as West Kootenay.
Yes, I see.
But his home has been in West Kootenay ever since the, years, decades back.
Yes.
Now, another man, Fred Starkey.
Yes, Fred Starkey.
He was a great pioneer worker for you in Nelson.
Oh, yes, a wonderful man.
And I suggested that he be sent to London at their convention I just mentioned 40 years ago. And he went over there and he did some good work.
Oh, he was a very public-minded man.
Yes. Now, one man that's being overlooked in history is Sid Norman.
Yeah, Sid Norman. Well, he's done a lot of writing.
Yes, but Sid Norman, his cabin in the Kootenays was still there a few years ago.
Whereabouts is that?
Now, I can't tell you, but Jack Mulholland maybe.
Yes, he'd know.
And the last time I was talking with Norman as he was going through from here, from Calgary through to California, he says, Hutch, I'm 83 years of age, and I'm going to California to end what I consider a wasted life.
Oh, is that so?
I said, you don't need to look at it that way, Sid. Ask the McMahon brothers of what they know that Sid Norman did for them.
Well, Sid did, he was supposed to have retired for quite a while, but he did do some fairly late writing for the Daily News.
Yes.
Of articles.
And he spent time in Toronto as well as Vancouver.
Yes.
As Calgary.
Yes. I think he was in Spokane.
Yes, now in Spokane. Well, East Kootenay, we have 6 ribbons for having won the prizes at Spokane, Seattle, and Nelson for our mineral exhibits there, reaching back to 1904.
Wow.
That's all we've got to show are those exhibits.
Yes, I see.
The rest are dumped out here in the city of Cranbrook's dump ground.
Is that a fact?
Dr. Schrum spent 2 hours lecturing on those collections up here in what was a school then, is yet.
I see.
And those collections had been in the Washington State College for 2 years.
Is that so?
One of the samples in there won first prize at Chicago World's Fair in 1893.
Wow. Well, I am certainly, I think the East Kootenay Historical Society, under these boys that are working on it here, are doing a marvelous piece of work, and I suppose there are ladies in it too. And I hope that they are given encouragement in their work, and I'm sure that they will, by hard work and a dint of perseverance, will bring out and put on record for posterity a lot of this.
It's up
history.
to the BC government to finance.
Absolutely, to help them. Yes.
They'll do the work.
Yes. Guy
But
Constable.
it takes money to buy space, buy paper, and
Yes.
labor of printing.
The Guy Constable said that in Creston the other day that
Guy's still alive.
oh, absolutely. I had a very nice interview with him the other day, and he's of that opinion that the government should take a hold of this matter and put a lot of this material into print before it's lost.
I was hoping to be able, my daughter and I, to go to Creston for next Friday.
Oh, yes.
But my experience on Monday last puts an end to that.
I see.
And if you see that constable, just say hello to him from Old Hutch.
I certainly will.
Tell him that I was wondering if he still remembers the night that we spent in the Monroe House in March 1906.
Yes.
Let him tell you the story.
Yes, I see. Well, I certainly will.
I had to race to catch a freight train to get back to Cranbrook because my sister had called me home because my father was seriously ill.
Oh, yes.
And I went back there and came home, and he died shortly afterwards.
Well.
But in racing to catch that train, my glasses and my little overcoat, light overcoat, were in the Monroe House.
Oh, yes.
And I had to get on the far side because the freight train didn't stop, It just reached out, the conductor reached out and exchanged orders with the agent. And there's 11 tracks the next morning reported where I had run 3 feet of snow.
Oh.
He got into an open horse car door.
That's all.
And woke up at Yak.
Oh, so.
And cold.
Cold, also.
And the next day, constable brought me up my glasses.
Oh, that's all.
Blended milk.
I see.
Then Roe brought me up my coat.
Well.
Those things, let him tell you that.
Yes. I'll get a story from him on that.
Yeah, well.
On some of those things.
Oh, but not for
Well,
publication.
he said that of course it was more or less on the fly, just the same as I've done any of these things. I was telling the boys here that what we'll do the next time, we'll try and make appointments so that the people that we would interview would have some little notice, so they could make a few notes.
Now get the ladies to do the managing what the men will do.
Yes.
Two of us at the Queen Elizabeth Hall in Vancouver West got more realistic social welfare service in 3 days there than we got in 8 months up here, getting down there. We don't forget that. And the Senior Citizens Association of the Kootenays and of BC were organized as a hobby.
Yes.
A man with the same name of W.F. Edwards, same name as my old seatmate at Iroquois High School, had organized the farmers across Canada. He was organizing the senior citizens of BC about 10 years ago.
Is that so?
And he came here, he was his wife, who was nearly blind.
Is that so?
His wife came here from Vancouver and put a second meeting over.
Wow.
Now, we senior citizens are not a bunch of dubs.
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not.
And that meeting in question Wednesday, or next Friday, this week, we'll have something to consider. And if you can be there, get there.
Well, next Friday.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow? Not tomorrow.
Yeah, yes.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Friday evening.
Yeah.
I'll be going home tomorrow, but I figured on getting home a little sooner. But I'll call on Guy Constable tomorrow.
I'll do.
And I'll get
just
his...
say hello to him.
I certainly will.
And A.B. Smith and he are great friends.
Yes. Yes, I sure will.
Now then, you were on a task that it'll be to your credit to put to.
Well, I'm hoping it'll do some good and make the Kootenays better known. That's I've been interested in I've been a member of the Nelson District Oldtimer Association ever since it was formed in 1831. I've been an executive member. I was just a kid, you might say, when it was formed. That is, I was one of the young fellows, but I was interested in it. And, of course, there were a lot of very fine old-timers, pioneers, attending the meeting. Hume was our first president. And such men as he and Widdowson and a whole lot of them, you know.
Pardon me, is Widdowson's partner still alive?
Who was that?
This is a man that took charge after Widdowson died. They worked with us at Marysville.
Dolphin? It isn't Dolphin.
No.
Dolphin was one of his, John Dolphin was one of his men.
No, it is, names. Like my own.
Jack Gibson? Jack Hunter? It wasn't Jack Hunter.
No. His son is working there. He's way on in close to 90 years of age. One of the head men of the Christian Scientists.
Let's see. I don't know. Quite a few of them have gone.
Well, gracious. It's like I should remember it as well as my own.
Yes.
Their office is just up from the old station, short distance. Goodison and Co.
Well, we may think of it later.
Yeah, well, it don't matter. But if you happen to be in that office, just say hello to old Hutch.
I certainly will.
Bert Frazzini down here at the west end of town has a picture of a group, Widdowson and I think his name is Spicer, are in that picture, taken here in 1904.
Is that so?
And that's going into our Historical Association's files.
I see.
And he lives right down on the west end here, just this side of the west West Arches. Mr. Hunter can put you next to that.
Yes, well, that's fine.
And now, we'll try our best to help you.
Yes, well, that's just wonderful.
And we can't. Some of us are so crippled up we can't travel around.
Well, that's really my fix, but we'll just keep on moving around until we can't move, that's all.
I daren't move past.
Yes.
My days of moving past are over.
Yes.
But anything that we can do, let us know.
Well, that's just fine. Well, as I was saying, we...
don't hesitate to write if you want advance arrangements.
Yes, absolutely. We'll certainly do that.
We want, personally, I'm in favor of the women taking charge of things.
Yes.
The men doing the work.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you go into any store, public building, who gives you the service?
Well, of course, the women. What I wanted to do before we closed off this interview, and I apologize for leaving it to this time. Of course, where were you married, Mr. Huscroft?
In Gardiner, Ontario.
In Gardiner, Ontario. And your wife?
Cardinal.
Cardinal. Oh yes.
That's where the Canada Starch Works was established by W.T. Benson in 1837.
Well.
That town is now flooded out by the...
That's all right.
And Benson brought the Hereford cattle to Canada and the Sparrows.
Is that so? Well, that's just wonderful because our wives, we couldn't do very much without our wives helping us.
I did for quite a few years.
Well, now I would like to get your daughter's name here too.
Agnes Theodora.
Agnes Theodora. Well, come in here, Agnes, and say hello to the radio audience.
She's known as Dora.
Known as Dora, eh? And you're living. How long have you been in? You've been here all the time.
I was born in Cranbrook.
You were born in Cranbrook. You're a native daughter, eh?
Yeah.
Well, that's just fine. And well, we're very pleased to welcome you to the Tales of the Kootenays program. And as I was going to say, this is up to the present time, it's a following out a hobby, and neither the station nor myself get any recompense for this, except the pleasure that we receive. And it's supplying a program that seems to be pleasing the audience. And I'm very, very pleased to have it coming over the Cranbrook station in East Kootenay as well as Trail and Nelson. And dear knows what this will lead to, but in any case, we're having a lot of fun making up this program. So I'm very pleased to have had been allowed to come into your home today, and I want to thank you for this information that you've given me, and I'm looking forward to another meeting sometime, and looking forward to receiving a lot of the information that you're able to give. Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ross Fleming speaking again. For Fleming Recordings on our Tales of the Kootenays program. And I have been having an interview with Mr. Huscroft, and now Mr. Joe Almack has come in, and Mr. Almack is Secretary for the East Kootenay Historical Association, and has been very, very helpful in taking me around to the different people to interview. Has been a terrific help, and my association with Mr. Almack and Mr. Hunter yesterday when Mr. Hunter took me up to Fernie. Has just been wonderful cooperation, and I'm looking forward to the future to a great deal of cooperation from these men and from the association. So I'm going to have Mr. What is it again? Almack. I'm going to have Mr. Almack, I must be getting tired. I'm going to have Mr. Almack ask Mr. Huscroft some information on some of these stories. So go ahead, Joe.
Yes, thanks very much, Ross. Now, I'd like to ask Jack Huscroft here a few questions about Kansas Johnny. I understand, Jack, that you knew Kansas Johnny when he was in this country.
I did.
Do you know where Kansas Johnny came from?
I can tell you his story as to where he came from. Kansas Johnny was born in southern states, I think, Kansas, of Canadian parents who had moved down there during the previous century. And in coming to Canada, he was really a man who looked after cattle and horses. And he spent the last winter before coming to Canada alone in a cabin where he had nothing to read except in Webster's Dictionary and the Bible. And he read both of them through according to his statement 2 or 3 times. He was one of the best informed men on scriptural quotations that I ever met. His language showed his ability in handling the English language. And he came into East Kootenay in 1863. The next year after his being alone in that camp. And he settled at Fort Steele.
I presume he came in with the gold rush.
As a pack horse man. He packed a load of material up to Perry Creek's camp of Mr. Sherwood on Manchester Creek. In the early days, I can't say just what year, and while he was unloading and getting ready to make supper in the camp, Sherwood asked him to do so, and he'll be back in a few minutes. He wanted to show him something. Sherwood, by the time Johnny got supper ready for them to eat, Sherwood was back with the richest pan of gold pennies that Johnny had seen up to that time.
What creek was this?
That was on Manchester Creek, but Sherwood had gone out to his workings and back. The workings were probably a quarter of a mile away. They were not on Manchester Creek.
In what area is Manchester Creek?
That's on the right west side of Perry Creek, about 6 miles above Oldtimer. And that gold pan in showing interested Kansas Johnny, as he was known, and his right name was John Ewan, E-W-I-N. And he continued to pack from Fort Steele up to Perry Creek, grub for people like Lafayette French, the man who helped, who grub-staked Lemon and his partner, whose name I forget, and the historic Lemon Mines was exposed to Lafayette French by Kansas Johnny, and the story published in the Calgary Herald some years ago as a correction of the story that Mr. Ken Liddell of the Calgary Herald had published and appreciated very much when he got the facts. Now, Johnny Ewan had been working with Lafayette French at the mouth of Gold Creek doing some plastering, and their work is what gave Gold Creek that name. While in camp one evening, French asked Johnny if he had ever heard tell of Lemon and this other man. And he, why, yes. Well, he says, I'd like to find them. And the result was that he gave Kansas Johnny the story of his having grub-staked them in Montana some years prior to that. And the next day, Johnny guided French to the grave of the victim of Lemon, up on Grave Creek, named because of that incident. And he showed him where the bones of the murdered man had been buried in the campfire by Lemon.
This was down in Montana near the border.
Up here in B.C., in Grave Creek. To the right, there's two Grave Creeks.
Yes, there's several.
The one on the east side of the Kootenay.
On the east side of the Kootenay?
Yeah, up behind the cave up there in Morrissey. A couple of squaws, or maybe more, saw a man riding a saddle horse, a pack horse, and a saddle horse with an saddle, no rider, coming away from the part of the country that they had just traveled through. They turned back, got suspicious, and turned back on that trail and found the bones of this murdered partner of Lafayette French and Lemon.
This would be Blackjack, was it?
Blackjack.
Yes.
What was his surname?
Was it McDonald?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
Blackjack. And that's how Grave Creek got its name. Now, Kansas Johnny started Lafayette French backtracking through Montana, and later on got the story from him as to Lemon having died in an insane asylum somewhere, very likely in Montana. I'm not positive. It's just where that was. But as Johnny told me, the story behind that would take several pages. But Kansas Johnny was a man who made the first brick, burnt the first lime in East Kootenay. He built the first chimney, plastered the first house down at St. Eugene Mission, and was having it at his camp on up the creek there near Bull River, Little Bull River.
Oh, yes.
the man known as Tata Brown came into his cabin one night to stop with him overnight, and as he was fleeing from the policeman who he left at Tata Creek, named after an Indian by that name, and he used the expression Tata to the policeman whose horse he had swiped, while the policeman had Brown's.
And that's the origin of that story.
That's the origin of Tata Creek. And the story, really, that Tata Creek really should be is named after an Indian of that name and not after Tata Brown.
I see.
Tata was a common saying with Tata Brown ever afterwards. He ran a business in Marysville a few years later, and
I see.
And Tata was a sort of an expression that he kept using.
This
Tata Brown
cabin that he had on Little Bull River, was that where the old stopping house used to be on the Kalispell Trail?
Down the Kalispell Trail, somewhere down in that neighborhood. I can't tell you for certain just where that cabin was.
I see.
But there are so many historical scenes down in that area that it'll take a lot of us old-timers to get together and work out the identity of many of those sites. Now, I think last year there was a lady here from West Kootenay wanting to find out where her father had lived up the Little Bull in a cabin that later belonged to the William Douglas, not William Douglas, but
Jim Douglas.
Jim Douglas.
Was that Captain Ned Parker?
I beg pardon?
Was that Captain Ned Parker?
Parker was the name of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've stopped overnight several times in that cabin, and the other Douglas cabin across the Bull River and down there, Douglas Mountain is named after him. They were two sons of Senator Douglas of Manitoba.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, now coming back to Kansas Johnny, did he live around Marysville after that time?
No. His home was, his home was in Fort Steele up till he moved to Cranbrook. Just what year I don't know, and he lived in Slaterville.
I see.
He and his wife lived in Slaterville on that street going towards where the old brewery was, the original brewery. I built a house for a man from across, just behind and Mrs. Matheson, Pete Matheson's widow, is living close by the house that Kansas Johnny and his wife lived in.
I see. And when did you
She
meet?
will probably know just which house it is.
I see. And when did you meet Kansas Johnny first?
Oh.
That would be soon after you first came to this part.
It was in 1902. I met him first.
How old a man would he be then?
Well, he came into the country in '63, and he was about 20 years of age when he came into the country.
I see.
63, 43. At the time I met him, 43, and he would be in the neighborhood of 65 years of age.
I see.
He died about 83 years of age.
I see.
Here in Cranbrook.
Is he buried in Cranbrook?
I can't say. I don't know.
Yes.
But he was, at 83 years of age, in walking around, it was a pleasure to meet him and get him to talk about old times.
I can believe it would be.
And the language of that man, you'd think you were talking to a university professor.
Well, thanks very much, Jack. I think we've appreciated very much hearing this story.
That you can refer to the Calgary Herald's back numbers, and Mr. Ken Little is still writing for the Calgary Herald. He can trace that back and get us the story as I wrote to him. Now, Maclean's magazine was, a few years ago, were about to publish a story about the Lemon Mine. And when I noticed that they were about to do so, I dropped them a line to be careful. And they didn't publish the story. I told them that Lemon was a faker, a murderer, and died insane. And
how did Kansas Johnny get his name? Kansas.
Because he came from Kansas.
Oh, just because he came from
But
Kansas.
his name was John.
John Ewan.
E-W-I-N.
Oh, yeah.
And his wife was, I think she was a native of Fort Steele, but I'm not sure. And his daughter was just escaped being drowned in St. Mary's about 40 years ago when there was a boat upset there below St. Mary's Lake.
I see.
You remember the story? You were in Marysville.
I don't think I remember that.
Well, some of the Marysville old-timers can tell you about that. You would be a young lad.
I certainly would be.
And she was in the water. There were two drowned. They were from Cranbrook. And she was quite tall, quite muscular, and able to swim. And she got out of swift running water onto Cottingham and got crawled up onto the bank. And that's how she saved her life.
I see.
And the story was published in the Cranbrook Cranbrook Herald, I think, or the Courier, maybe.
Yes.
It'll be, the Courier will have that story.
Yes.
Okay. And Kansas Johnny was one of the highly respected pioneers of Fort Steele. And anything he said, you could depend on it.
I see. Well, thanks very much, Jack.
That was his reputation. And the old-timers of Fort Steele will verify that.
Well, that's just wonderful, John. I'm going to call you Jack, too.
Well, you might.
I guess everybody else does.
Well, I'm known as Old Hutch.
Yeah, I see. Well, thanks from my point of view, too. Thanks very much for this interview. And thank you, Joe, for conducting this interview for me, because you are so familiar with some of these things that it takes somebody that knows something about the background to bring out the points. And that's where I'm at a little disadvantage. So thanks very much, both of you, for this fine interview.